Welcome to the virtual lunch today. Welcome, Bob.
I'm a lawyer in Massachusetts, and I write a blog called Law Sites, where I write about technology and innovation in legal practice. I write a weekly column on Above the Law about technology. I do a podcast called Law Next. Started doing another podcast recently called Legal Tech Week. I was on a call last week with a group of lawyers with my lawyer hat on, not my tech writer hat on. For many of them, it was literally the first time they had ever been on a Zoom call. I thought that was pretty amazing. I mean, and these were established Boston area lawyers. I think first it's introducing lawyers to these technologies that some of them hadn't used before. So that's going to change. And second, because of the fact that there are so many people having to be pushed into this, it's giving lawyers a little bit of a license to play around with technology in a way they hadn't before, I think. And it's okay to make mistakes because there's a whole bunch of people all in the same boat doing that. That really is going to make a major difference going forward in terms of helping lawyers, those who were still fearful of technology, helping them get over that hurdle and move forward. As horrible as it is and that we're having to go through this, and as horrible it is that as so many people are having to suffer by going through this, with my tech hat on, the kind of the silver lining of the fact that we are going to have some giant steps forward, I think, in the legal world because of all of this. And I think that's ultimately going to mean that we are better at serving clients and better at meeting the needs of those clients. Legal education is one of the areas that has been most exposed for its shortcomings in some ways as a result of this crisis. I mean, number one is probably the courts, but I actually recorded a podcast earlier this week with the dean of UCLA Law School, who had just written an op-ed in the National Law Journal recently calling for the provisional licensing in place of bar exams, with the idea that law school graduates would be provisionally licensed to practice law. They'd have 2 years in which they'd have to kind of work under the supervision of a lawyer. To me, that just makes an awful lot of sense. Any of us who have taken the bar exam know it's a joke. You cram in to learn all the stuff you never learned in law school, and you sit there and you take this exam and keep your fingers crossed. And then as soon as you get the indication that you've passed, then you immediately forget everything you learned. To me, some kind of an apprenticeship or provisional licensing makes so much more sense as a way to prepare lawyers and help them transition into law practice. What's happening now is that states are instead, I mean, California and Massachusetts have both said they're going to do an online exam in September. That'll be a challenge in and of itself. I don't know how you proctor an online exam and other such things, and they got to figure that out. But hopefully this will lead to some longer term reforms. I don't think it really changes what a tech-enabled lawyer looks like from before to after. I think it's really more that there were an awful lot of lawyers who had not yet become tech-enabled. The tech-enabled lawyer is somebody who is using cloud-based systems and therefore is able to, just by virtue of that, if nothing else, is able to be working from wherever he or she is. So the whole work from home thing isn't necessarily a big deal. We keep hearing, and surveys keep suggesting that big chunks of the legal profession have yet to move to the cloud. But I wrote yesterday on my blog about my case, just did a quick spot survey of lawyers about how quickly they were able to transition to working from home. And in fact, they found that lawyers were actually able to do it pretty quickly. I don't know if that suggests to me that more of them are already using cloud-based systems, or if they just quickly scrambled to get up to speed on doing that, or just adapted whatever they were already using. I see Dennis Garcia sitting here on call, and I know Microsoft Teams is having a day right now. A lot of lawyers that have already been using Microsoft Office but hadn't really explored Teams as a component of that have started to do that. There's some really powerful tools in there. After I wrote about the reforms proposed in Utah, they proposed this whole set of changes to the rules of professional conduct that would allow private investment in law firms and create this new sort of licensing body that would approve and regulate non-traditional legal services offerings. I got hate mail from lawyers as though I were the one who proposed these changes. Like, don't shoot the messenger. I was just writing about it.
What were their criticisms?
One of them was classic, that I and the justices in Utah and others are all part of a big firm elite conspiracy to shut down small firm lawyers. And all of this is just about putting them out of business and taking away their livelihoods. And we've been emailing back and forth all week with a kind of a conversation, this one lawyer and I, about this, because I said, look, one thing I am not is a big firm elite lawyer. I've been a solo my whole life. I've never worked in a big firm, and I certainly don't identify with that world. But I do really believe that the technology advances that we are making and the reforms that we are talking about are all directed toward improving how our system serves the people that we are supposed to be serving, which are the clients or many who aren't clients because they can't get access to legal services. So going forward, the way this all comes together is one, I do think that the advantage of using technology for lawyers is that it enables you to deliver your services more efficiently and at lower cost. And that means you can serve more clients, perhaps. You can offer your services at a lower cost to clients who are struggling financially. And the regulatory reforms beyond that, I think, mean that it's a recognition that it's not a monopoly of lawyers to deliver legal services. There are other ways to deliver legal help to people that don't have to require a licensed attorney as part of the picture. I think that's becoming very clear to a lot of people that not only is that true, but that it's essential, that we just can't meet the legal need. I mean, we're going to have a tidal wave of legal problems coming out of this crisis over the next months, years. And I think everybody is realizing now that we're not equipped to address it. What we're seeing in Utah is going to be accelerated. I think this is going to cause other states to take a really kind of fast track efforts they've been making to look at regulatory reform there. I think the medical analogy is the perfect one, and it's been made a number of times, but it's the legal system needs to move into more of a triage kind of a system like what exists in the medical world. You know, when you have a problem, you don't start with the specialist or the most expensive physician. You start with the nurse practitioner or a physician's assistant or somebody like that. Now we're starting with telemedicine and doing it that way. And depending on what your problem is, you're rooted to the appropriate person. That might be a medical doctor, but it might not be. That's kind of the model that something like LegalZoom has been trying to do over a number of years now. You know, I think a lot of people don't even realize that LegalZoom employs an army of lawyers. They think of it as all about non-lawyers, but in fact, there are a lot of lawyers who work at LegalZoom, but they route you appropriately to what you need based on your need. So I don't think this means fewer lawyers in the future because there's a whole lot of work for lawyers. I mean, if we're not serving the legal needs of 80% of the people in the country. My favorite story of the last few weeks was this judge in Louisiana, Scott Schlegel, who's, essentially jury rigged an online court. I mean, he was doing this before this whole crisis happened, but he's accelerated it himself. And he's using Zoom and Slack and Calendly and various other off-the-shelf generic tools to serve the court system that he runs in Louisiana. In the course of our interview, he made the comment, he said, I can get any court in the country online for $500. So maybe one issue is that we don't need to be overcomplicating. I've been involved in Massachusetts where I'm on a number of bar committees and court committees and that sort of thing. And I see the hoops the courts have to jump through to do anything relating to technology. They have to form a committee, and then some judges will sit around for a year and talk about what they should do. And then they put out an RFP and they spend another year considering those. And then they ended up buying some piece of technology after all of that. So maybe now courts will realize they need to be more agile. Maybe themselves operate a little bit more like tech companies operate or something like that, and be willing to go with the minimal viable product and make changes that they can make as quickly as they can make them and not look for the big budget issues. There are often opportunities that come out of adversity, and I think that's where we find ourselves. I certainly think there are opportunities for lawyers to more creatively use technology to deliver legal services. I mean, something as simple as putting more of their services online, allowing clients to generate forms or provide information online, and sort of a mix of self-help and lawyer review. I've been talking to a lot of lawyers too, and I watch a lot of discussions, and I do think there are some lawyers out there who are really going to be in tough straits, and I don't know the technology alone is the answer for them. I mean, there are some solos I've seen who are really struggling or seeing their business drop off precipitously, especially young lawyers, and that worries me. The billable hour is one of the greatest obstacles to innovation in law firms because it's essentially founded on a premise of inefficiency. The more time I can take, the more money I can make. I don't want to be too efficient. This presents an opportunity for lawyers who are tech savvy to be thinking about restructuring their fees. The lawyers will be quicker to forget, but I think the clients will be slower to forget it. Clients are now going to see how things can be different. They're not going to forget that.
Bob Ambrogi, everybody.
Very nice of you.